Welcome to the Place and Resources Overview Committee of the 12th of February. Just want to check with IT that we're online. We're good to go. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Please remember that when you use your microphones, you must press the button to switch off your microphone after you have spoken, as the system only allows one microphone to be used at any one time. The red light means that your microphone is on and the camera will automatically pan towards you. Please also note that the microphones should not be moved. Please speak directly into the top of the microphone and try to avoid turning your head when speaking. Please can all members and officers introduce themselves each time they speak. Well, I'll start off by saying I'm Councillor Andy Canning, I'm a member of Dorchester West and chair of this committee. Item number 1, apologies. Do we have any apologies?
No apologies today.
Jolly good. Minutes of our last meeting I held on the 24th of November. Does anyone have any query with those from an accuracy point of view? No, in which case I shall sign them shortly. Item 3, are there any declarations of interest? No, that's good. Item 4, public participation. We have no public participation today. Item 5, questions from councillors. We have no questions that have been submitted today. So on then to item 6, working with communities. Sam, I believe you're kicking off with this.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me now? Good morning, members. My name's Sam Crowe. I'm Director of Public Health and Prevention, and I'm here to present this paper for you this morning, which is called Working with Communities. Members will note that this is a reworking, if you like, of a paper that you saw in November, which first presented the Statement of Reasonable Expectations. What we've done is we've listened to feedback from members following the debate and overview, and we're coming back with a revised paper which is on its way to Cabinet. But it'd be really good to hear the views of overview this morning as I take you through it. So I'm just going to make a few introductory comments to set the context around it, and then happy to take questions. As you know, the council plan set a clear objective for Dorset Council to work more closely with communities under the Communities for All priority. And partly that was a response, I think, to evidence that we've heard over a number of years from engagement and consultation, that sometimes we're not always that easy to work with. We don't always effectively join up services in how we support residents. And some of the consultation work that we've done with the voluntary and community sector in the past year, we heard very clearly through a survey that our partners say that we can be difficult to work with, partly because sometimes we work in silos and it can be difficult to know how to reach out to the council, how to connect with the council, and sometimes who's doing what. It's clear from the budget that if we're going to continue to be able to meet the level of need and demand that we see through services, we're going to have to start to change how we work as a council. This means being more connected. It means understanding how to make the most of working upstream, what that means if we're going to reduce the cost and impact of demand. These changes are also affecting our partners as well. So if you look at what's happening locally with the changes to NHS Dorset, the Integrated Care Board, they are about to cluster and become a much bigger organisation representing nearly 3 million people. And one of the consequences of that change is the importance of being able to stay connected to local communities and hear concerns of residents. But there's also an opportunity in there as well. So one of the national changes that the NHS is doing is to start to move care closer to where people live. So in its 10-year plan, they're talking about treating more people closer to home. They're talking about this idea of neighbourhood health and neighbourhood health hubs. That's a real opportunity for Dorset Council to also consider how we're making the best use of our assets in communities and how we can join up and make those services easier to access, more joined up and simpler for all residents. So I think if we're going to make a step change in prevention, and start to understand how we can join up those services more effectively. That work will have to be informed by, I guess, the first thing we need to do, which is to understand concerns of communities and residents. And as we listen to some of those issues and we start to discuss those issues in communities, that in turn starts to inform the design if we're going to think differently about how we're working. So in the first year of the community's work, it was largely about building the evidence base, building up relationships and starting to sort of define what we think should be in the programme. I think we're now much clearer, and this year we're focused on delivery. And this is going to include developing that joined up model of locality working. We're working on a single council approach to prevention. That's not to ignore the excellent work that's happened so far in children's services, adult services, public health and housing. But there's a benefit, I think, in joining that up and being much, much clearer about how we're using those resources and being able to measure the benefit and really hear from residents the impact that it's making. So the paper before you this morning asks committee to recommend to Cabinet that we adopt this new approach to support closer working with communities of community conversations. The paper sets out the detail, but we're also asking committee this morning to consider and endorse the statement of reasonable expectations. Shall I continue, Chair? Thank you. So that was obviously first brought to overview committee in November 2025. It's a set of principles for working more closely with parish and town councils, and we're hoping for it to be signed by Dorset Council and Dorset's Association of Parish and Town Councils, recognising their role representing and supporting member councils. I recognise that in November, the statement didn't sufficiently address the importance of the role of Dorset Council ward members. And we recognise that they are a key bridge between what Dorset Council's doing and the work of parish and town councils. It was also clear that we need to do more work on briefing ward members about the direction of travel and the context around these community conversations. And to that end, we designed and delivered an all-member webinar in February. And we very much hope that the content that we set out in that webinar can be used by Dorset Council ward members to brief parish and town councils about the intended direction of travel. I'd also draw members' attention to paragraph 1.5 of the report. We've just highlighted a couple of changes that we've made to the statement. Specifically, we've tried to highlight and strengthen the role of the ward member within that proposed agreement and the proposed way of working. So in summary, I hope that committee will endorse the community conversations approach and in the process also recommend that we adopt the revised statement. I'm happy to take questions.
Firstly, are there members who are not members of this committee who wish to raise any questions? No? Councillor Biggs?
Yes, Councillor Richard Biggs, Property Assets and Economic Growth. I believe this is a good document, and I think some of the points that were picked up previously, some mutterings, I think have been addressed. I just really would endorse it, and I hope I want to listen to other members to see if there's any issues. But I mean, clearly, this is getting this through the door is really important. So I would hope that this can be endorsed speedily so we can get moving and improve that relationship between our town and parish councils so we can get on with the real good work that's behind it. Thank you.
Is there is there anybody else who's not a yes, Councillor Andrews?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor John Andrews, member for Sherborne East and Cabinet member for Place Services. This paper emphasises that different communities across Dorset have differing needs and ambitions. The proposal for clusters and a test and learn approach ensures flexibility and local sensitivity and innovations. I'm just concerned about the risks and the frustrations of local councils will allay being the way it's been handled in the past and currently. I just wonder what we're going to do to negate that. It's overwhelmingly positive, this paper, I have to say. Really good paper. I hope we do what we say we're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Postlethwaite.
Hey? Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to be quite so dramatic here. No, I just wanted to thank Sam, actually, for bringing this revised agenda item forward. I did bulk a bit at your last, the first one, and had all sorts of issues with it. But I think this is smashing, and I certainly second John's statement about we hope we're going to walk the walk. You didn't quite say that, but I think that's what you meant. It's all very well talking the talk, but we do need to demonstrate that we can also walk the walk. I've always felt it was really important for ward members to work closely with their towns and parishes and be a conduit for their concerns. That's what I feel we're here for. I know we're here for individual residents as well, but it's a supportive role that I feel we have. And this sets it up nicely. I really welcome it. And I think the revised, hang on a minute, statement of reasonable expectations is absolutely spot on. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Tarrants Ward. First of all, yes, Sam, thank you very much indeed. Your introductory remarks were very reassuring. It's exactly the direction of travel that we should be on. So yeah, good, absolutely. I think I get the point about that we now have to deliver, but to be fair, you could say that about any of our plans, and we've been thinking about this for sufficiently long that I'm reasonably confident that we will deliver. I think that Councillor Andrews' point, though, is one that we could keep absolutely at the front of our minds throughout this, that communities vary enormously across Dorset. And so at no point in this exercise will one size fit all. And I acknowledge that you've acknowledged that, but I think that's going to be absolutely key here. What I would ask, and then I've got a couple of small points to make about the actual statement, but just in the general background of this, what I would very much hope, Mr. Chairman and Sam, is that the locality model, the plan for that way of working, comes back to this committee so that we can have a good look at it and a really good understanding of it, because I think we can help you design it so that it's going to work for the communities that we represent. So, you know, and a good long, not long, I don't mean to keep you past your mayoral debate, but a good meaty discussion of that in well in advance of when it has to go to cabinet. I think that would be a good contribution that this committee could make to that whole big way of working. In terms of the statement of reasonable expectations, I have a general point and then a couple of specifics to make. The general point in paragraph 1.3, which is where we're looking at, it claims that DAPTC represents town and parish councils. The difficulty here, and we have to, and we've really got to face this before we go any further with this, is of course not all town and parish councils, or certainly not all parish councils, are members of DAPTC. And there is no requirement that they should be, and increasing that every year, the number of smaller parishes that don't join DAPTC increases. So we have an issue there that we have to sort that out right very early on. The feedback I'm getting from the town and parish council, or the parish councils that are not members, and even some that are, is that they're not expecting to see this communication coming from DAPTC. They're expecting to see it coming from us at Dorset Council. So there's a gap there that we have to address. I understand the contribution that you want DAPTC to make to all of this, but they're not representative in the same way as elected members and an accountable local authority is represented. So I'm not happy with the use of the word represents in that first paragraph, this with the dotty 3, and interestingly, in the version of this draft that was sent out by DAPTC for consultation, that paragraph dotty 3 was not included. So my first recommendation is that I think until we have addressed this whole issue, that provocation to all of those people who are not members, could we just delete that paragraph? As I say, it's not in the version that they've sent out for consultation. That was the only difference I could see. So that would be my first recommendation, if committee would support that, that we just take that paragraph dotty 3 out until and then come back and decide how we're going to address the whole question of those parishes that are not members of DAPTC. My next request is that in paragraph 4 dotty 2, we should include ward members in there. You have included ward members throughout. Thank you very much for that. But I do think in paragraph 4 dotty 2, where we're saying Dorset Council and Town and Parish Council will work closely together to identify and explore, etc. Dorset Council board members and Town and Parish Council, why wouldn't we be in that bit as well? That was the, there, you could put ward members in every paragraph, but that was the one that leapt out to me where it absolutely should be there. So that's my 2 suggestions for amendments that I'd like to make. Thank you.
Do you want to answer those points?
Thank you for the feedback, Councillor Jesperson. It's really helpful. I do agree that we need to be absolutely clear who is communicating and in what capacity. So we've already picked up that feedback from some of the early meetings that we've had where we've been exploring how we would run those community conversations. So the work that the team's doing at the moment is to draft a clearer statement of responsibilities and accountability between the different parties. And as we go into the conversations, we need to be really clear exactly how that process is going to run. And particularly at what point do we brief the local ward councillors, the parish and town council, and set it up in the right way so that no one's got more information than the other, and we can be in the room as peers to have a good conversation. I think the point about 1.3, we did make that amendment on advice from the monitoring officer, recognising that while they don't represent all parish and town councils, they are a membership organisation that represent most. But I'm happy if you want to make that recommendation for Cabinet to consider. I think that's a reasonable point.
Morning, members. Jonathan Mayer, Monitoring Officer. Yes, I did ask for that change. I think you could equally, Councillor Jesperson, ask for the word most to be inserted into 3. Dorset Association of Parish and Town Councils does represent most councils. And from the perspective of officers trying to work with town and parish councils, it's much better to work with a representative organisation. I'm about to write to all 82 of you as councillors this morning about an issue of intimidation and harassment of councillors. I want to get that same message out to all town and parish councillors as well. I don't want to write to 160 town and parish councils individually when I can write to DAPTC and say, can you get this message out to your members? So I think they do have an important, and no, they're not elected, but as a representative body, really important role to play, and one that could really help us. Thank you.
You want to reply to that?
Not entirely. I understand that. I mean, I suppose I could settle for most. I'm not entirely happy. I'll wait to hear what others might have to say. But my point is that that paragraph is not in the draft that has been sent out. So already we have an anomaly there, because I've seen that draft and they haven't got that paragraph in there. So there's some tidying up that needs to be done there, whatever we do. I'm still a bit uncomfortable, and you haven't responded to my second point about adding ward members into the dotty 3 at the end.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. I think that makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Simon Gibson, representing Verwood Ward. There's a couple of general things I'd like to say. Firstly, as a thank you to Sam and to Jen and everybody who's been working on this to try and bring back something that this committee can find a little bit more acceptable from what we discussed back in the autumn. In particular, thank you very much for the specific time that you carved out to speak to us individually. As a member of the opposition, I appreciated that. I've come to learn that you don't get everything you want, which obviously is the case with this report and the changes too. I, as you know, would have liked us to far more staunchly disavow the Fresh Start report. I would like to see no mention of it ever again. I still think it is a poor report that does not reflect fairly various aspects of the local government ecosystem here in Dorset. But given that it now only gets a passing reference, I suppose that allows me to move on to talk about the thing that you really wanted to talk about, which is the statement of reasonable expectations, which is acceptable to me now as currently drafted. It's acceptable in the sense that it is what I suppose you would start with if you were trying to build better relationships with town and parish councils. Your opening remarks covered some of what I was going to say. So without the delivery that goes after it, it is nothing but warm words. And I suspect the detail that comes afterwards is the bit that all of us, including town and parish council partners, are really interested in. The principle of things like locality working, the principle of widening who we speak to, I find acceptable. But I still do need some further reassurance following the conversations about where decision-making lies, because warm conversations in the community are welcome. Decision-making being devolved to those that do not have an elected mandate is not. And that's the sort of thing that we must always keep in mind. There's been a move towards things like citizens' assemblies in other parts of decision-making that I simply can never support because of the unelected mandate that they have. Those of us that go through election are held to a higher standard, and we should be. And therefore we must always be at the forefront of decision taking locally. So in terms of the specifics, I am happy with the statement, but I agree completely with the 1.3 point that Councillor Jesperson makes. One of the really interesting bits of feedback that I have had since opposing the statement back in the autumn was the unsolicited amount of conversations and calls that I received from town and parish councillors, so in some cases chairmen, in some cases just regular members of those councils, most of whom councils are a member of DAPTC and are deeply unsatisfied with the position DAPTC have taken throughout this process. I think it's clear to me that the DAPTC leadership have a lot of improving of relationships that they need to do, not just with us, but with their own membership. Because actually, if they do not, I suspect they could find themselves in the position where actually most member councils that they currently represent could become some. Because currently my confidence in them has not been lower in all the 18 years that I've been a town and parish councillor. And I just want that on the record. There's nothing I know we can say about that here in this committee. But it does make the point that Sherry makes even more important. They speak for most town and parish councils, not all of them. And we must be really, really clear to those councils that aren't in DAPTC's membership right now, and those that are wavering, wondering whether they're actually getting value for money from them going forward. What we must say, if we're trying to reassure them that we understand them, is that we won't cast them as a side note. They're not going to be, we'll only speak to them if it's convenient to speak to them. We need to be preparing a relationship with all town and parish councils that says, whether you're inside DAPTC or not, we will speak with you, and your communities have the right to decide whether DAPTC is a membership body that you want to be a part of. And if you decide that you don't want to be part of it, you will still get the same level of service from us that you would expect. So, you know, far from, I'd like to see that bit beefed up, if I'm honest, but for the sake of making progress, I think what Sherry said is very sensible.
Mr. Gray.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I recognise a lot of what you say, and I hope you can see that the way that we've tried to shape the paper reflects the conversation we had. I think in terms of that Fresh Start report, because it's not a Dorset Council report, we can acknowledge that there were unhelpful generalisations in that report, but because it's not a Dorset Council report, I think it's hard to disavow it. It wasn't the right context for introducing the principles about how we intend to work. And that's why we took the decision to reshape the paper and to set it within the context of what are we actually going to do in terms of a process. I think your point about the different types of democracy, deliberative democracy versus representative democracy, we're going to have to work through. I think it's really helpful to hear views on that. The point I guess I'd make is that we need to trust the process, and we don't yet know where we're going to end up, but we will try to be as transparent and open as we do that. And I do take your point about being really, really clear where decision making lies. That's a really important point to hold in mind through the process. So really, really helpful comments, and thank you for your feedback and support today.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add there? Councillor Northam next.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Northam, Upwey and Broadway Ward, Dorset Council, Upwey and Broadway Ward, Weymouth Town Council, and start by commenting and agreeing that there's a huge variation of towns and parish councils across Dorset, and representing all those different interests in one group, I think is a challenge for both Dorset Council, but also a challenge for the DAPTC in itself. I'll come back to that in a moment. So moving on, I looked at some of the work that's been going on double devolution and the rest of it, and deciding what these clusters might be, and the best way to cluster it is the work that still has to happen. And I welcome the revised and simplified statement of SORE as being a vehicle to put a framework around that. I personally like the work that the LAGs are doing. I think that's a very comprehensive and useful grouping, which focuses from a Dorset Council where services are delivered. I like travel to work areas because that's often quite a dominant feature of the characteristic of areas. I wouldn't want to go back to borough and district council boundaries because that has other connotations, I believe. But in looking at these areas, I think we should look at that. But there's another class of cluster that I think should be included, which isn't necessarily geographically bound together. I think there are some characteristics of some parishes that don't want to associate with other parishes, but almost want to be independent, small parishes, pepper potted across Dorset, who share more in common with each other than they do with their adjacent neighbours. And I think there may be a need for looking at non-geographic clusters as well. I know it complicates the picture, but I don't see how else you satisfy everybody. There's always this fear of being swallowed up by the bigger organisation. Okay, that was 2, 3. I really liked this whole idea of we should be strengthening democratic representation. It's really important. Unelected people, whether they're co-opted onto councils, I think that's a dubious thing, or whether they are elected and opposed on councils is also a bit of a dubious thing. It's not what I call proper democracy. To me, proper democracy is about having choices, not being presented with a single solution. Okay, so I welcome those words which are in there. So I've made my point about it being non-geographic. So I think there is, if we add that word about DAPTC represent most of the councils, I'm happy that that's a sensible addition rather than deleting the whole paragraph. And I think that when we come to looking at the revised structure, we should also look at what is the role of DAPTC? Because I see it at the moment as trying to represent everybody, which is a challenge, whereas something which represents different interests, different types of clusters, or just represents the clusters might be a better approach. So rather than having Dorset Council, DAPTC, and then a bunch of other things, might it not be better to have Dorset Council, some other things, and then town and parish councils feeding into that some other things? So I don't know, I don't think this report needs to say re-examine the role of DAPTC, but I would hope that the work that's going to go on will. So if you could respond, that'd be much appreciated. Will it?
Thank you, Councillor Northam. Really helpful comments as well. Just to kind of pick out a couple of them. I think this whole approach to what is the right cluster will be one of the questions which needs to be addressed as we start those conversations. I've said elsewhere that this shouldn't be seen as a programme of work that happens for a while and then stops. It's a different way of working. So I'm sure we will find what works best. And I think it's a really important idea what you do with those areas that may not feel they fit with a particular geography. How do we address and have a different conversation at the right time that picks up some of their particular concerns? I think it's a really good idea. I think I welcome the support for including the word most. It is difficult and it's perhaps not binary, is it? I don't think we can throw the whole paragraph out because they do have a role representing parish and town councils, but I do take on board the comments that we've heard today. And I think through this process, I would hope that DAPTC perhaps takes some of that feedback on board. This is going to be about finding a way of working that works for all of our parties, but also, you know, recognises our statutory differences. And we're just going to have to be in the room to work through that, I think. In terms of the idea about some other thing and what that might be, I hope that comes out through the community conversations. And again, I would stress that this isn't about going in with preconceived ideas. We need to hear from all of the representatives in those rooms as those conversations happen, what might work best for the particular areas that we're engaging with.
Councillor Tarr next.
I'm Councillor Tarr, the Winterbourne and Broadmain ward, and nearly all the questions I was going to ask have been answered. So it's I'd like to repeat, there's an excellent report, very skillfully done. And I'd like to say, with reference to Councillor Gibson's comments, that each of the parishes I've mentioned it to, and some are members and some aren't, have been completely unaware of this whole process. they start commenting by saying, well, Aunt Mayor's a waste of money, which is where we were perhaps 12 months, 2 years ago. So there has been no information getting through to them, even if they are members, and I'm not sure why that is, but whether somebody in the network hasn't passed messages on or what, but they are concerned. And last night, the last meeting, we were quite late with the meeting. My little parish council were all there, and I gave them sort of rundown as best I could in 10 minutes on what was happening, but they were totally unaware of the whole thing. So I think we need to bear it in mind when we talk about DAPTC, about which I know very little, but that's something. And it isn't a major problem these days to send out 96 emails. It's, somebody with a list of the emails can quite easily send that out to all members, even if it is a lot. It just needs half a day to do something like that for some member of staff to sit down and at least send it out to those people. We're not expecting a response from all of them, but at least they will be informed, and they could be asked to put their comments through their parish council or their cluster or whatever we decide the consultation method is. I would just like you to explain a bit more about page 11 of the of our agenda. 4.3, we're moving to delivery. Parish councils, the voluntary and community sector, and health partners to improve outcomes for residents. I'd just like you to explain a bit more about that. That's the only question I had left.
Thank you, Councillor Tarr. In terms of your comments about awareness of this work among parish and town councils, I'll take that back. I believe DAPTC are going to take the statement through their annual general meeting, but this is helpful feedback, I think, just to find out what they've done to prepare their members in advance. So it's useful intelligence. Paragraph 4.3, I think this is where the potential of the conversations is really exciting. So we don't yet know what the right model of delivery will be. But as I said before, recognising that things are changing in the local system, not just in terms of our Dorset Council provided services, but the way that the health service is thinking about local services, it provides a platform for working differently. In the past, maybe we've put too much emphasis at times on large strategic boards that are distant to communities. So I think this gives us a real platform to be able to go out and try to explain in a clearer way what these changes might mean, but more importantly, listen to how the changes are being felt on the ground. From my experience of being a member of the Health and Wellbeing Board, one of its statutory responsibilities is something called the Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment, which is a bit of a mouthful for most people. But what we hear through the board and through ward members is when pharmacies are closing or when people are finding it difficult to get their scripts processed in a timely manner. Not everyone can drive, not everyone's happy using online pharmacies. So that change in services that's happening on the ground is real. And sometimes it's difficult for a strategic board to respond to that. Having a mechanism where we can hear very quickly what might be happening and involve our health partners so that they can hear that too, I think is going to be really important going forwards. We need to be in the room working together to reach a model that is going to be improving the join up of services. Does that help?
Could I come back with two questions? The first one is where do charities and pressure groups stand in that statement? Because there are these groups who are keen to, some of them do lots of things, some of them just stand back and criticise. But same with charities, some of them just comment, others are ready to act. Like Wildlife Trust would be a good example of someone who actually manage things for us. Where do they stand in that consultation? Because that's an important part of it, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And as we've said in the paper, the initial round of conversations will absolutely aim to involve not just ward members, parish and town councillors, but some of our statutory partners and non-statutory partners in the voluntary and community sector play a really key role in that. The trick will be finding representatives who want to be part of the conversation in a constructive way. And even before you get into decisions about governance, there's something about being able to join up the concerns on the ground and the needs on the ground with some of the opportunities that might arise from having that conversation. So quite often, in my experience, some of the first conversations might be critical, and there might be a bit of sort of disappointment voiced about various issues, but you can move past that fairly quickly and find common ground. And it's that process of building a better relationship that I think is really important here.
The last point I wanted to make was that parish councils very often have quite strong desires. My parishes would like their kids to be able to get to Hardy's School for evening meetings, for sports meetings, to go swimming after school, to go to further study before summer exams or coursework has to be handed in. And the children from most of my villages, there's one village now has a link with a cycleway all the way to it, but most of them, the kids can't cycle home because the roads have got too dangerous, mainly not during the day they are, and in the evenings they're not too dangerous because of parents taking their kids to school. It's the main problem there. But that is, they would like to find a cheap solution of having a track of some sort, needn't be a grand cycleway, to the next village where there is a cycleway, or into Hardy's, which we've managed to do in 2 cases.
Councillor Tarr, I mean, I know you feel very strongly about this issue, but I'm not quite sure what relevance it is to this particular paper.
Oh, I see. The sorts of things that parish councils might want to do would be things that normally Dorset Council would have done with some government funding, which is what happened with the previous cases. So I'm looking at whether parish councils will actually have the power, we don't know, to go directly to the mayoral authority and say, you're offering grants for X, Y, or Z, can we claim them? So that's
I think it's an important issue, but we'd need to kind of approach that, I think, a step at a time. I am aware there's a new active travel plan that's doing the rounds, and that's an ideal document from which to start to have those conversations and to work out what can be done before we're sort of maybe going too far down the route of bidding for separate pots of money. But that conversation about what can be done in the community is absolutely where the focus needs to be.
and complies with government policy, which completely ignores rural authorities and totally ignores them. So it's not a good place to start from. We've complied with it very successfully. We've done a very good report, but it is not a good set of outcomes for Dorset. It's one of the reasons why we get less money than any other council in the country.
Do you want to add anything? No, okay. Councillor Crabb?
Yes, I'd just like to say that I support the paper, especially along with the very sensible suggestions that a number of members have made. So, yeah, I completely support it now, and my reservations now no longer exist. So thank you, everyone, for your very useful contributions.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, I'd like to come back on the point which you've just raised, actually, Sam, regarding the process and the balance of the way everybody works together with and across the board and schemes, like the DAPTC, the councillors, and of course, officers. You said a very important thing just then is finding the balance of who has got what strength. As you can see by most comments today and from November, we were very disturbed about the fact of this sense of who's in control, what is going on here. And that's what's fed from the last meeting was very much, very anti, like being told exactly what you should be doing. Sorry, I don't do that. And nor did I do as councillor. So therefore, the thing is that the comments have been raised 4.2, 4.3, etc., has been the air of caution of the wording of possibly, maybe, could be. No, I want to say this is where we stand. This is where the DAPT stands, and this is where the officers stand. So we have a chain of command. The reason I'm saying this, the fact is that's the NHS, and I must admit, I am a governor for Western Dorset Health Authority, but that's not connected with what Sam is doing today. I hope that's okay. Is that okay? Yeah, I can speak them. So therefore, the fact is that as the authority, National Health Authority, I totally get you. and you have got correct procedures in place, and it's working very well. And it's understandably across the UK as well. This here is Dorset, and we are trying to understand the fact that the balance of wording comes through our parishes, councils, and people, as I said, are not represented and who are. So therefore, there's got to be a voice of recognition and balanced voice of recognition that the communication is spread to all of the parishes, no matter whom pays or not. And therefore, the DAPTC is actually working for and with Dorset Council and its parish councils. It's not actually there to govern what we are supposed to be doing. That's my important factor. I don't want to see governance. I want to see the DAPTC representing and helping as a chain of communication from the parish councils to councillors and officers on board. That's my question, really. How are we there now? Because I don't see it. All I see is possible, maybe, could be. And that's where that. But the paper, Sam, I can say is absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for what you're doing. And apart from those conditions, I'd like to recommend it in that manner.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Maybe I would suggest that this could be something that the EAP might want to look at. And then that opens up a space for a conversation about what we think the respective roles are.
Totally agree with that. Sorry. Can I recommend that as a condition, please, or a recommendation that the EAP does actually look at this? Because not as a final decision on today, but to say the fact is to look at it for the wording for the future. But I personally would like to strongly recommend this paper.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a minute. I just want to bring in the Vice Chair who would like to make some comments as well, and then everyone will have had a chance to make some comments. So please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Andrew Starr for Upton and Litchett. I'm much happy about this paper this time than last time. I think it's secured a lot of the issues we had. It's still potentially quite a bumpy road ahead for you to bring all the different councils together with their different requirements and different egos, if you like. One of my issues with this right from the start really was the amount of weight it will put on the town and parish councils, because we know that quite a few of them are short of members because it's voluntary and quite a lot of work. But I'm hoping that because there's more work, if you like, they'll have more effect as a councillor, so it might induce more people to actually do it, because I'm sure that at the moment it's quite frustrating that people want to be a parish councillor and they find that they don't really have that much effect. So hopefully it will have a good effect in that direction as well. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a very quick comment. I think it's really helpful feedback again, Councillor. One of the aspects of this work is, I guess, feeling our way into it. And I think developing a way of working that respects the abilities of the parties to really play a proper role in that. There may be some areas or clusters where some of that work can be shared to remove the administrative burden. But again, we're very open to being transparent about the feedback around how that first round of conversations goes, where we need to improve the support that's on offer to enable people to effectively take part. We'll keep that under consideration.
So really the message to go out to the town and parish councils that the ball is in their court. It's, they can have an effect, but they've got to make some decisions about this and help us along.
Maybe rephrase that slightly. The ball not being entirely in their court. The ball's in all of our court. If we're going to make progress, we have to be in the room together and to work through these issues. So as I said before, trust the process.
Thank you. I think there's been a very thorough debate, and everyone has had an equal say in things. Is there something else you wanted to add, Councillor Taylor?
Sorry, Chair, just basically say what the recommendations we said today, and the points of view from both non-members and members have been represented and will be incorporated into the final process of the paper. It's just that we've had a conversation, but has it been documented to where it should be? I want to make sure it goes into what the documents are, so we actually see that. Can we guarantee that? Is that?
Yes, that's exactly what we will do next.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, very quickly, I did ask at the beginning, and it would be helpful to have that recorded, that the process should come back to this committee at an appropriate time, because I thought that at the beginning of the meeting. I'm even more convinced of that now, because we've just had a really quite a nice constructive discussion, and it would be nice to carry on and do that with the bigger story. Thank you.
Okay, clear. Yes, that's noted. And the comments that Councillor Taylor is noted as well. The removal of the word most, it was removal, wasn't it? And tidying that up. But broadly speaking, what we're being asked to do is to take the comments that we made today, make a few tweaks to the paper, and then it should go to cabinet. And in principle, you're being asked to endorse the whole community conversations approach, and also the revised statement of reasonable expectations. So can I see all those in favour of that? I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Jolly good. Okay, thank you very much then for that item. And then we will move on to item 7. Once we dealt with the technology. Okay, we're moving then on to item 7 to deal with biodiversity. Who's going to start? Mike, Scarity.
If that's okay. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Garrity, Corporate Director for Planning. And to my left is Bridget Betts, who's the Environment Policy and Partnerships Manager. In case you have any more detailed questions, Bridget's on hand to help. I just introducing this paper. This is I'd say this is a really positive thing. We've got a report on the biodiversity duty, and just for context, public authorities within England have a duty to conserve and enhance biodiversity in England. So that's referred to as the biodiversity duty. And we also have to report on that duty. So what it means as a public authority is that we have to consider what we can do to conserve and enhance biodiversity. We have to agree policies and specific objectives based on our consideration, and we have to act to deliver our policies and achieve our objectives. So that's actually quite a substantial requirement. So it goes more than just a series of words. It's actually a plan for action. So we actually have a duty as part of that to publish a biodiversity report to show how we're actually progressing on those things. And that has to include a summary of the action we've taken to comply with the duty, how we plan to comply with it in the next reporting period, and any other information that we consider appropriate. So there are other requirements there as well that we have to meet. So the way we're doing this, our natural environment team are coordinating the approach, but it's a very much a partnership approach. So working very much both within our own council, but beyond that as well, to actually understand how we deliver and are at the vanguard of delivering the biodiversity duty, and also how that aligns with all sorts of strategies that we do. There are very close relationships with things like the local nature recovery strategy, which has recently been approved, as well as things like biodiversity net gain, which is a statutory requirement to deliver 10% biodiversity net gain. So you can immediately see a lot of the overlaps with planning, but it's not just planning, it's other functions that the council actually commits to. So the report that's appended to this covering report is our biodiversity report. We have to complete that report for the period ending December 2025. And what it means is we've got to submit that or adopt that report by March. So we're seeking your your agreement to pass it on to Cabinet, or your endorsement, should I say, because Cabinet will have to approve that report in order for us to comply with our legal duty. But you will actually see when you look at that report how many positive initiatives there are in terms of what we've already done, but also the kinds of initiatives that we're taking forward and how it touches on just about every aspect of what the council does to a greater or lesser extent. Some things more directly, other things maybe obliquely, but nonetheless, the actual duty does go to the heart of everything. And it really is quite important for us in terms of demonstrating how we deliver on the climate and ecological emergency that the council has signed up to. So it intertwines very neatly with that. And all of those initiatives are really, really positive, but it's not a done deal. The report is not saying we've done it, therefore we've reported on this. It's actually showing what our commitments are to actions moving forward as a council. And as I said, that involves quite a lot of partnership working both within the council and beyond to actually ensure that we're all pulling in the right direction to deliver that biodiversity duty. So hopefully you've had a chance to read through the actual report, which is, and you'll see from that just how much is going on. And I'd like to commend the report to you. And obviously we're happy to take any questions and as we can. Thank you.
First things first, is there anyone who's not a member of the committee who wants to ask a question? Councillor Biggs.
Councillor Rich Biggs, Property Assets and Economic Growth. I really like the report and the policy. I think it's really sound stuff. You will see mentioned in there many times the word county farms. I know Sherry Jefferson will be nodding as she's on the EAP that helps manage them. I can tell you that many of these things in here are being enacted on our new tenancies. We're currently looking at 5 farms to re-let before the end of March, which is going to be tough, but we had interviews last week. And I can tell you that the environmental part of that is certainly challenged in question for the prospective tenants. And they came up with some really interesting ideas as well, some of the things that perhaps beyond that we'd thought of. And the officers are really keyed up to the fact that they're going to have to measure those in KPIs and report back on all our farms to try and reach the targets, including the 70% environmental sustainable farming methods within there. So I just hope that, I suppose the question for members is I hope they appreciate that and understood that, and it's going to be embedded in there. And obviously the challenges as well, also running our farms so that we don't cause pollution incidents as it's happened recently, and then with the extreme weather, it's a real challenge to make sure that the infrastructure is there and the planning for that improvements to prevent sort of environmental incidents, runoff, etc. But yeah, it's a good work, and I hope you support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor John Andrew Sherwin and Cabinet Member for Place Services. As you will see, that the Place Services continue to do the good work that was already started by the previous administration, birds cutting, biodiversity, and keep doing that way. And the Green Space team are on the ball as far as any biodiversity goes. In fact, I only had Giles talking to me yesterday about a certain area. But yeah, so. Totally behind the paper. Thank you very much for the paper, and it's been a few years coming, but thank you very much.
Right, people who are members of the committee. Councillor Taylor, first, I think.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for the report and the deliverance of what we've just seen today. Principal question is, I was going to talk about the farms, but thankfully Councillor Biggs has already addressed me. Sorry, Councillor David Taylor, Chancellor Mary. I haven't said that before, but I'm today on that one there. My key question on the thing is that we've obviously got the environmental issues kicking around the county at the moment and across the country. With this report, as was addressed last night about the trees drowning and things like that, are we engaged and ready for points of problems coming towards us, because we do have major problems heading towards our environmental area at the moment? are we addressing those which are being raised now? Because it's quite important what's going on.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Taylor. I'm taking from that you're sort of alluding to things such as climate change and the impact of that, and things like climate resilience and how we adapt to those sorts of changes. And undoubtedly there are significant challenges ahead. I think I suppose as a bit of reassurance on that, one of the best ways of actually tackling some of that is natural solutions. So using natural solutions to deal with things like flood risk, resilience to extremes of climate. So if you think of things like planting trees in urban areas, how that helps to control the microclimate, how it actually improves air quality, how things like that can also help absorb rainwater and surface water, how we actually deal with drainage is relevant to all of that as well. So I think natural solutions plays neatly into the intention to tackle both climate change and deliver biodiversity net gain. So the two are very closely related, and by working across a partnership and keeping an eye on all the changing circumstances that are moving forward, I think that's the way that this goes. And as I said previously, this isn't just a fixed point in time. It's an ongoing approach to how it effectively goes to the heart of how we work as a local authority, because we have to embed biodiversity into the choices we make in terms of policies, decisions, and everything else.
Thank you. And yes, the report is excellent, and it has been a long time coming. We've waited a long time for this. I think it's about nearly 10 years, some of it I can work out from what I remember in distant history. The thing I'm emphasising, because last night there was a report on TV, I'm sure a lot of us have seen it, where planting of trees, vast wards of trees ready for building developments, this and the other, were actually flooding and dying. And the thing is that there was a problem with the fact of the ecology of actually putting those trees into building developments, because they weren't now not suitable, because they're actually budding before they could be implanted. So therefore, are we speaking across to businesses as well as environmental helping areas of our county, making sure that we're all talking on the same page and delivering the best for our ecology and our economy?
Thank you for that question. I would say yes, we are, and that's part of the local nature recovery strategy, sort of we're moving from strategy to delivery. And we very much promote the right tree, right place. I recently had a conversation with a councillor who had a whole load of trees they wanted to plant in their community. And we talked around that, but they had no land, and obviously we don't want them on the verges. So we talked around, actually, those trees are hedges. Have you thought about working with the landowners and filling in the hedge gaps? So changing the narrative really about what they can do. And he was really welcome that the community could be proactive in doing that. So we are looking at ways to do that, because there's lots of ways you can deliver things, and we just need to change our thinking that a tree is always the right thing. So, and I back what Mike has just said around nature-based solutions. You know, we work with people like Wessex Water, and that's really important that we have that relationship, because they are doing that as well. So we need to do that jointly.
Just say thank you very, very much. And excellent, and the report is excellent, and I commend it. I just say thank you very much. Can we go forward? Yes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Jesperson next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Clarence Ward, and Shadow Cabinet Member for the Environment and Farming. Well, this is just an utter joy, this report, isn't it? Though, I have to say, it could have had more pictures of dormice in it for me. One dormice is never enough. You know, taken together with the local nature recovery strategy, which was published at the end of this last year, it tells a really, really effective and successful story. It's really, really powerful. We all know that all of this stuff is going on across Dorset Council. At least I know about almost all of this. But to see it drawn together in this way into this report is really, really effective. It's very, very encouraging. And as I say, I think it's powerful. What this report is demonstrating is how Dorset Council is addressing so many of the issues and so much of the things that matter most to our residents. Because of course in Dorset, we have an environment that is better than most, and second, in my view, as a Dorset woman, second to none in the country. So we have a really particular responsibility, don't we, to work with nature and to make sure that we leave Dorset in better than we found it when we all became councillors. So yes, so I think this is really, really encouraging. It's a delight to see it. You know, keep up the good work. What I just in terms of my general comments of how it could be made even better. In your blue boxes, you described the policy on objectives and actions, and that's fine. And then on the other side, we have the future actions. Now, these future actions are perforce a mix of policies and objectives and actions, some of which done by Dorset Council, many of which are saying we will continue to do what we're already doing, which is entirely right. Some are working with partners, some expressing how we're going to encourage people and so on. And I'm absolutely comfortable with that because there's no other way we could put that together. But some of these future actions are actually concrete actions which Dorset Council is going to do. And for a number of those, what I would like to see added, not before next March, but in the future, is a metric. In other words, I want to see for these concrete actions, by when, by whom, how much, something we can measure. Because if there's no metric, then there's nothing then that can feed across. If there's nothing to measure, there's nothing then that can feed across into the dashboard. And the dashboard is the tool that's increasingly going to become increasingly important as the way we measure all of this activity. It's also the tool that's going to be looked at twice a year, I think, by the Place Scrutiny Committee. So we need to close those two things up. I checked some of these things against the dashboards as it currently is. The dashboard's not up to date, so I think we know that. So could we have, just as a sort of examples of what I'm talking about, we are saying we're going to increase the number of verges in SNCIs. Well, how many verges? You know, how much verge are we going? Increase nature-friendly verge management. How many verges or how many miles of verge? Update the right-of-way improvements plan. Well, by when? You know, I mean, I know we have a plan, but it's not in here, and we need to nail this out. You know, the biodiversity net gain protocol and the biodiversity net gain effectiveness. Again, how are we going to do that? Let's have some actual concretes in there that we can measure. Air quality in Dorset, really, really important in the Dorset Heathland section, but we've got no metrics, just the statement of intent. So that would be my, as I say, I'm absolutely not suggesting that you can put this in place by the time this goes to Cabinet, because I'm aware of the timescale. But going forward, could we go back to this report? Everything is a living document, isn't it? And just go through and identify those future actions where it's an action on us, and put some measurables in there so that it can talk to the dashboard in due course. And I understand that absolutely not all of that doesn't apply to all of the things in your future action, because some of them are statements of intent and some of them are where we'll work with other people. So, you know, I'm not being too prescriptive about this. That would be my main point. But apart from that, which is just how it could be improved, it's a super document. I was really, really pleased to read it. It brought together a really positive story about what Dorset is doing and doing well. And I was quite proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you for those really, really useful comments. I think that's a really great thing to do, and we'll add that to the sort of metadata or side of it, because we don't need to report that back to government. That's too much detail for government. Bear in mind, this has got to go back to DEFRA, so it's our DEFRA report. But because we went out, we just coordinated a lot of that work, and we went out to a lot of teams. It helps us to hold those teams to account as well. So we can add those columns so you can have that sort of data behind it, and that will help feed in. So thank you, I'll take that on board.
Just to clarify that a minute, so what we're saying is we would like to have these metrics and targets. But presumably once we get them up and running, they'll report back to scrutiny committee rather than coming back to here.
My understanding is we do report back to scrutiny on those nature figures, so we do some of that. So and I guess some of that is done, but not all of it. So when we did the biodiversity duty report, what we realised is we report on some of those things and they appear on the dashboard. But actually, what we discovered was actually there's quite a few departments and teams that are doing more for nature than we ever imagined. So we've got people in children's services, people in adults, and that's what made it a good read actually. And there's probably more that we don't even know. So the bigger this becomes, the better it becomes. So I guess the biodiversity duties, the narrative maybe comes here, but the scrutiny of figures goes there.
Did you want to follow that up?
Sorry, just to say, yes, that the key here is the dashboard, isn't it? Because if we can get as much of the Dorset Council activity feeding into the dashboard, then we're only doing it once. We're only reporting it once, and we know exactly where that's going, which is scrutiny twice a year. And then gradually that dashboard will become a really useful, powerful tool. So ideally, I would like to see it all funneled through the dashboard, and then, as you say, Chair, that goes to scrutiny, and they can take it apart. Or
Councillor Northam.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to remind myself what the extent of this report should be. I understood it to be the biodiversity duty for land which Dorset Council owns. What I see missing from the report, I think is missing from the report, and that's my question really, where are they? Are the triple SIs, which are effectively, so in Weymouth we have 5 triple SIs. The 2 well-known ones being the Lodmore triple SI and the Radipole triple SI. We also have 2 coastal triple SIs and 1 quarry triple SI. And there's no mention there of them in any of the report. There is mention of the managed by Dorset Council triple SIs, and that might be the distinction, but to my mind, it's about ownership. So there's a nice picture of a Lodmore wren.
there is.
Yeah. So that's the only mention Lodmore gets. Dorset Council established the Lodmore Country Park, and in my neighbourhood plan in the early days, I proposed building on it. That was rejected by Dorset Council. They own the land and they're entitled to do so because it was for leisure use. Well, leisure use, it's primarily an area of old tip scrubland that has a role for biodiversity, but there's nothing mentioned about that. So really, the main question is, are we only talking about land which is directly managed by Dorset Council? Shouldn't we also be talking about land which is owned by Dorset Council but is leased out to others? Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I think primarily we're talking about the land that is managed, what we do to our land, and I think triple SIs are mentioned in the report, aren't they, for that? But
yeah, sure. I mean, I think it refers. I think the report refers to all the things such as habitat regulations and all the duties that respond more, I suppose, more generically that would apply to our responsibilities for managing internationally protected habitats, SSSI. So they would fall within very much our responsibilities anyway, because we have a duty to ensure development doesn't lead to harm that would affect the integrity of those. We also have a responsibility to mitigate any impacts that arise from development to ensure. So we have things like Dorset Heath Partnership, for example, that specifically deals with mitigation to ensure development doesn't harm those habitats. So and we also have those statutory duties around biodiversity net gain. So those things are all part and parcel of our responsibility. So whilst there may be a focus in this report around the council's own duties, so for our own policies and our own land and what we do with it, in effect, this touches on areas that cross over into other statutory duties that we have in any case. So is our role as a planning authority in dealing with planning applications to make sure that those SSSIs are protected. And obviously, if we own land that has an SSSI designation, then things like the 30-30 target it is all relevant there, as well as our responsibilities around making sure that those sites are kept in good condition and that development isn't going to lead to adverse effects on them. So I think the principle of it, there may not be so explicit a reference to them, but the duty, if in effect, sort of does embrace that, and as do other legislative requirements on us. So it's probably just hasn't come out very explicitly in the report, but it does talk about all of our habitat requirements that impose on a duty on us in any case.
Sorry, I looked at Appendix A, which was the one that was referenced from the statement on SSSIs, and it only talks about another SSSI, not any of the ones I've mentioned. There are 14 SSSIs mentioned somewhere. And so I think you said that, yes, Dorset Council does have a responsibility under the biodiversity duty for reporting on all the land that it owns, not just that which is managed. I don't believe that report. This report I really welcome. I just think it's missing some stuff, okay? I would like to see those important SSSIs given the same attention as the ones that are managed, because I know that they're in trouble. There are some of the ones that are in unfavourable. So that's around SSSIs. There's also SNCIs in Weymouth that don't get any mention, but the Lodmore Country Park and the old tip there, that's an area of real opportunity in Weymouth. If we're not going to build houses on it, then what are we doing with it? And it should be featuring in this biodiversity net gain strategy, and it isn't even got a mention. So I find everybody thinks of Weymouth as being urban. Anybody who hasn't been to Weymouth, I'd be very happy to take you around these areas and show you the two green lungs of Weymouth, up the River Wey and the Lodmore Valley as well. Those are really important for Weymouth, where it is higher density housing, but these are the green lungs. There is nature in Weymouth. I'd love you to come and see it. We're the only place that has a bird reserve within the town centre. So can I I think it's too late to include it in this edition of this duty report, but could I just have clarity whether a future update to this document, I don't know how long it will be, might include all the land which is owned by Dorset Council, because I think it should have mention.
Well, I think where we've got to focus attention on is what the duty requires of us, and the actual duty falls on local. For a start, it's the local authorities, not town councils or parish councils that duty applies to. I mean, there is also details in one of the appendices about sites of special scientific interest, which lists the sites that the council owns. I think we want to be careful about making sure the scope of what we report on and what we do is actually within the remit of what the duty requires, and also what we can actually influence and deal with, because that has got to be our priority. I think it inevitably these things evolve over time. So I don't think it's right for us to make commitments to things at this point that we don't actually have that responsibility to take on at this point. But obviously, as part of the process of looking at biodiversity and how we move forward, there will inevitably be things that link in with that duty, and we may well get information that we can report on. But I think there is it's important to be very focused on the scope of what that duty requires. And it does have commitments that even if we don't specifically mention every piece of land that the council owns, the commitment for the 30/30 target, for example, is about how we manage our own land holdings, which applies to everything that we do. So whenever a particular service area, like highways, for example, have works that they're doing, they're having regards to that biodiversity duty, and they're thinking about, well, what can we do in terms of the projects we bring forward to actually bring about that duty? So in effect, it does take account of that. It just means we don't want to make it an overly complex process and burdensome about having to report on every single big piece of land, where actually there isn't necessarily initiative currently taking place on that. So I think it's just about keeping the scope manageable and within the remit of what we can actually do and what we have to do.
Councillor Northam, yes.
So I think you're saying that the responsibility for the biodiversity report includes all the land in Dorset that's owned by Dorset Council, but you're not choosing to report on every instance. Okay. I do find it disappointing, and I've had some conversations with Bridget about, yes, there are the general improvement plans, but there's nothing specifically identified. And it is an area where the need is about the community's need to have local natural space that has good environmental qualities. So I'm disappointed that it's so, as I've said before. I think we need to be doing more to look at how the leasees are dealing with their duty, because I think they have a passed on duty for biodiversity net gain. Is that the case?
Yes, just to come back, there is a distinction to be made here between the biodiversity duty, which is about protecting and enhancing biodiversity, our duty to report on it, and what we can do to actively and proactively engage with improving biodiversity across Dorset. The local nature recovery strategy is a tool that we've designed specifically to do that. So that actually is looking at opportunity areas for biodiversity. That will touch on all sorts of areas which are managed both by Dorset Council, but equally lots of land that is privately owned or within community control, whatever it might be. It's a template almost for saying, let's use this as a stepping stone to look at those opportunities. And the way that we would see that transpiring in future is where we have those opportunity areas, they become something that is taken into account with decisions that the council might take as a landowner, as a planning authority, in its remit as highway authority, for example, that it gives us a framework for saying this is a real opportunity for us to think about how we can improve some of the networks for biodiversity, how we can better look for stewardship of that land. So I think what you're asking for, it's not that it isn't there. It's important to know the distinction between the different documents and what they're trying to do. So the biodiversity duty is one set of reporting. The local nature recovery strategy is that proactive action plan in effect for how we can look for further opportunities and partnership working. So I think it's there. It's just it won't necessarily all come forward in one document, if you see what I mean.
Thank you, that's fine. Councillor Gibson was next. Oh, sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Gibson, representing Verwood. That last piece of clarification from you, Mike, is I think has answered my question, which was going to be on a very similar topic to what Councillor Northam asked. Because when I was reading through this report in the appendices, it pulls out a very specific reference to the Moors River system and the SSI being in an unfavourable condition. We obviously own unmanaged land upstream of it, but the particular interest in the report talks about the Moors Valley Country Park and the impact there. And at all of the great work that we've done when it gets to Moors Valley to try and improve things. But I was sort of left feeling as though there was a missing piece of information, because the report identifies where some of the issues affecting biodiversity, water quality, etc., come from. In this case, runoff from Verwood, etc. And then it says, look, we've got an unfavourable area that we very much manage in Moors Valley, but unusually perhaps representing a ward that's right on the Hampshire border, is the missing piece for that sits in Hampshire. The solution to this, the problem we've identified and on land we manage, sits outside of our control. Yet at the same time, there's a piece of work ongoing which gives me great hope for the future that the Environment Agency and Wessex Water seem to be leading on in trying to fix the land in between the two areas that we own. And whilst I feel reasonably confident that the work is going to take place and will make a difference, it feels that Dorset Council is slightly absent from the conversation on the ground, but also in the report itself. And I think that's a little bit of a missed opportunity for us, because we stand to benefit at Moors Valley tremendously if that work takes place. And to date, I mean, it's been an issue I've been dealing with for 4 years now in my ward because of a flooding impact. But the only Dorset Council representation I've had to date has been through the flood management team. And then you see it here in a report, and it's talking about the problem that we need to solve. And I just wonder whether a bit more emphasis could be put on about working with partners, Hampshire, the Environment Agency, just to try and reassure anyone that reads this document that we've done more than just identify the need to fix the issues at Moors Valley. Because on David's point, is you can't have everything. It can't be war and peace. I understand that. But given that we've gone to as far as identifying the specific issue at the specific site, it just feels like there's something missing. But other than that, I think the report's great. It gives me, as somebody who had in other biodiversity reports has shared my concerns about getting the balance right between biodiversity and planning. This report gives me great confidence that actually a lot of what we're trying to do have practical benefits. There's a lot of good stuff here, and I read it positively, and I'm happy to support it as it goes through to Cabinet. So the points I'm making really feel quite small in the grand scheme of things, because it's a good report. The only other point away from the Moors Valley, Moors River SSSI issue is on 3.9, it talks about the litter-free Dorset work. Again, great work. Again, I think we're underselling ourselves slightly on it, which is the only thing I would say is Dorset seems to have developed a really good ecosystem of community-led litter picking groups. Litter-free Dorset is the organisation that is with a, we at least part fund to try and coordinate it. And just for the record, thank you for the litter summit that I requested that was took place in January. Again, I just think given how much work we're doing and given how keen the volunteer sector are to help us improve biodiversity via litter picking, it just feels as though we've missed a trick by not including them slightly, given that I know that they feel that this is the start of the conversation with them, not the end of it. They would, if they were looking at this, they'd want to see what it is that we're going to do to try and allow them to do even more. In terms of practical actions, I think, they're very good at litter picking town centres, and that improves the biodiversity and the natural environment there. But I know the ask has been where you get litter sites on roadsides, for example, or litter sites in areas that are difficult to litter pick for normal volunteers. They want to work more with us to make sure that they can do that. And I'd love to see an action from us that said, how can we, I can see John shaking his head saying you can't do it. I mean, it happens elsewhere. It simply does happen elsewhere. And the point is if we feel we can't do any more, fair enough. But personally, I do feel that we can do more, as do they feel that we can do more. And personally, I would love to see a recommendation in here to say, let's try even harder than we have done to do more with our town and parish councils and our litter picking groups.
Does any of you want to respond to that?
Thank you for those comments. And I think there is reference in this report in terms of that partnership working and how we do extend beyond that. But inevitably, a lot of, I suppose the point of the biodiversity report is to pull together our reporting of how we're delivering on some of this stuff. The engagement goes on and continues to go on behind the scenes on a number of different aspects of what the council does. And you mentioned cross-boundary working as well. I mean, it's important to recognise that some of the things that will feed into this reporting process are already cross-boundary initiatives that we work. So if you take, I've already mentioned Dorset Heath Partnership, that works across BCP and pool area. It has implications for Hampshire as well because of the way that mitigates the impact. We do similar things on a number of other initiatives around nutrient neutrality and a number of different aspects. Going forward, I think it's probably just for that point, it's worth flagging up that the emerging national planning policy framework is also talking very much about the importance of local nature recovery strategies being, an important document for influencing and decision making. So therefore, it's materially relevant to those planning applications. The other point that relates to is the government's drive towards things like spatial development strategies, which, assuming that we get confirmation that the geography of that will be the Wessex area, that will be a strategic level across Wiltshire, Somerset, Dorset and BCP. And again, local nature recovery strategies will need to link up across those areas because we don't just have administrative boundaries that determine where nature is recovered. So I think that work is going to grow in rather than get less. There's going to be further initiatives where that partnership working on a wider scale and the strategic impact of that will import itself into our reporting as well, because we'll have some of those initiatives showing up in our biodiversity report.
Can I just add as well? We've had our first meeting with the devolution people around local nature recovery strategy already, so that is in motion and just starting that process. So that's good news. On the litter free Dorset, yeah, they are an amazing group, and they're that sort of umbrella for everybody. But for our biodiversity duty report, this is about biodiversity. And while I forever sing their praises around all that other work that they do, it wasn't relevant. So we can only put in the stuff that is relevant to this. If this was just a council report, it would be a lot easier to do. But because it's a DEFRA report and it comes with strict guidance of what we can and can't report, so we don't write it just thinking, oh, what should we put in it? We follow the titles. That's why it's a bit dry, if you ask me, but we've done what we've been asked to do, and actually it's the best bit has been talking to all those different teams and getting them to all work together, and that's the beauty of it actually. And I think moving forward we can add to some of those things actually, not only put the metrics in, but actually say, is there anyone from any other team need to work with that team? That would sort that issue out, and that would work well.
Thank you. That's really reassuring. And I do take Mike's point previously that you probably need to read this document alongside other documents at the same time. And a perfectly fair point about you're working to somebody else's document structure. I think that's probably where a lot of us have come a bit frustrated, whether it's the metrics Sherry's talking about or what David's saying or what I'm saying is maybe it is just a bit rigid for what we'd like to see in it, because ultimately, when it asks about future actions, it just feels like we've got more to say than we do. But thank you for that clarification. To that end, I'm happy now with the report.
Good, thank you. Councillor Pothecary next.
Thank you, Chairman. Val Pothecary, representing Gillingham. Just very briefly, really. With great respect to Councillor Northam, I think we're in danger of getting very parochial, particularly in this forum, which I don't consider is that appropriate. But and that's said with respect. I just wanted to say, actually, thank you and commend our officers, Mike and Bridget, for an absolutely excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tarr next.
Councillor Tarr, Winterbourne and Broadmain, South Winterbourne and Broadmain Ward. I'd like to second that approval of the excellent report. I would have liked more time to digest it. I think the same applies to the last report we've been discussing this morning. It was landed on, we've got 5 working days to look at this stuff. And then we're told it can't be altered because the Ministry of this or that needs it fast. We need it next week. And I think it would be valuable if the members of staff who write these things could just have some sort of contribution from this committee, because I think some useful points have been made, which they could just have a think about some of the clauses, some of the language they've used, some of the priorities, which we can all think of. We could go on all day talking about it, but I think it'd be useful if it came back to this committee at some stage, or at least if we had your discussion with you just before these reports are produced, rather than getting a final report and being told this is it, you've got to approve it. That's all. It's not your fault, the way the system works. Thank you.
Did any of you want to comment on that?
Can I thank you for that? We're happy to do that. We did come, I forget when we came, was it November? So we did come with a sort of draft report, but we've now made it up to date. So, and we did take on board a lot of the comments that were said. So, but you know, we're happy to do whatever's needed.
So if that's done again, then I'm quite happy. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Anson. Excellent report. Does it sort of says on the packet exactly what DEFRA asked for. The thing is that what I think is missing out of this, as has been gleaned by all of the points mentioned in the chamber today, is the fact is that we're saying we're missing SSIs and various other bits and pieces from our reports. They're actually covered across the board by Dorset anyway, you know, in various other bodies. So therefore, the fact I think would be quite appropriate for this is to see a kind of a spider web map or something like that, do you know, which we used to have of the engagement of the various departments, so we know what covers what, where it's going where, and the fact that, but beyond the pale is the report this for the organisation, because we've actually gone beyond what we should do. So I commend this report. It's absolutely outstanding. But in things that regarding the other bodies, though, I think there should be a further map or additional paper to say we fit in there. We're also covered by this, this, and this, especially when the SSIs and various outstanding natural beauty, etc., comes involved with that in the score. So that's my kind of point to recommend. But at the same time, I'd like to commend this report. Thank you.
Do you want to comment on that? No?
Yeah, thank you for that. I understand the sentiment behind that. I'm obviously conscious of resources within teams and also of committee time in terms of what we can do to pull all of these things together. So I suspect we will be able to do that in some ways that we report things back, but we'll probably have to find an appropriate mechanism for doing what you're asking for there before so I wouldn't want to commit to anything at this point, but we can certainly consider how we can make that information available so that it makes it very clear for members exactly how all of these things intertwine. But one of the things that the duty report does set out is the different responsibilities across the council and how they all pull together. So it is a way of actually trying to consolidate that information, and it really gives a quite a clear narrative then around actually how much the council is doing to actually help deliver biodiversity.
And just say, Chair, it's just a suggestion, but I mean, it's been covered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Crabb next. Okay, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Nothing much really to add, but I did feel I wanted to make my feelings felt that it is a brilliant report and it shows some really good progress. I mean, as a bird watcher myself, looking at the stats from Avon Country Heath, Avon Heath Country Park, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So when it comes to sort of joint working, you're all working in the environment anyway, so you're all helping the environment, even if you don't necessarily, work in the same place at the same time. But yeah, Dorset is a fantastic epicenter for collective working, and it's having an effect, and it's really, really good. And yeah, I'm very impressed. Thank you very much.
Is anybody else? Anything else to add? Okay, well, then in that case, we need to recommend that this goes back to cabinet, isn't it, for signing off is next, I think. So can we see all those in favour of endorsing it? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Okay. Then thank you very much. That's very clear. And thank you for the very thorough report. Thank you very much. Right, to simplify the matters, I think it might be easier if you took over now for the rest of the agenda, and then I'll have to believe you shortly. So, as mentioned before, I have another appointment in a few minutes' time. So, Andrew, if you will just share the rest of the agendas today. Thank you.
Right, so the draft working programme. Does anyone?
Really quickly, Mr. Chairman, because I'm aware of the time. A quick comment and then a suggestion to see what the committee think about this to add to this add to the list. First of all, we discussed this morning with regard to the localities report and the whole question of working with communities, that in some form should come back to this committee. So could we have that added to our future items request, please? This second discussion is prompted by what was said just a second ago, but in terms of litter picking, and in a lengthy discussion at one of my parish councils last evening. One of the things that this committee is here to do is to identify areas of policy where we think policy needs to be reviewed or new policy needs to be written. And it's becoming increasingly clear to me that we need to clarify or do some work on the messaging that we send out to volunteer groups and to town and parish councils about what they are and are not allowed to do to keep their own areas beautiful. Because there are parishes that used to do all sorts of things like litter picking, clearing out their streams, loads and cutting hedges, cutting verges. And over the decades, and certainly the last decade since I've been aware of this, we've taken that away from all of our local communities piece by piece, because we've said health and safety, or we've said you haven't got insurance, or you've got to do a risk assessment. And we put all this bureaucracy in the way, with the result that I have lots and lots of conversations with my parishes where they're saying, well, of course, back in the day we used to do it, but now they won't let us. And they're not wrong, because they, and the they is nearly always us. It's sometimes some other equally well-meaning body, the Environment Agency or the police, whatever it might, or their insurance company, but they won't let us. Now, that this is a pity. This is an unintended consequence. And the upshot of it is now in this floods, we've had lots of really quite disappointed conversations in my parishes of people that say, well, of course, part of the reason this has got worse is because we used to do X, Y, and Z. We used to clear the stream, we used to sweep the gullies and so on, and now they don't. I'm formulating this literally on the hoof, because it's just come to my head last night and this morning. But I think we need to have a look at what our policies, what our messaging is about. Because I don't think when we started saying to volunteer groups, to community groups and parishes, be careful, I don't think we meant to get to the place where we are now, which is they think we've said you must not do this stuff. And I think we've got an unintended consequences. Now, I don't know whether this comes out of the Police Directorate and Highways, or whether it's that we need some advice from legal as to what you know, and it's to do with how to simplify the business of doing risk assessments. You know, risk assessments, could they be made a lot simpler? Some guidance about children. You know, I have been in a parish council meeting where people talked about doing their annual letter pick, and somebody said, oh, well, we can't have children joining in that, because then I'm going, if we're not going to use the children, we're never going to get the litter pick, because those, bless their hearts, they were the little hands that did it, because they came out for the sausage rolls, where everybody else is on the pen and doesn't want the sausage rolls. You know, so can I just put that down there as something that I'd like to come back to this committee for a discussion to see if we can rein in this thing and get some guidance out there, some policy or something that makes this better. And I literally would just like put on the list. I'm not expecting anyone to give me an answer now, because I've just sprung it on you. But there's a discussion, I think, and I can't think of a better place for it to happen than here at the Place Overview Committee, because we have an overview of these things. Thank you.
Can I just add something quickly? I'll set up a key lines of inquiry sort of work programming session, and we can sort of work towards a more detailed sort of specific, like get to the meaning and the root cause of what you're trying to investigate, and then we can bring that to John, so he's got something to go forwards with.
John.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor John Andrews, Cabinet Member for Police Services. Totally agree what you just said. I thought that's what the first paper on item 6 was all about. So that's part of that item 6 conversation with local town and parish councils, because everybody's different. You know, our parish council, I know Weymouth, for instance, has set up a legsman this year. So they've got 2 legsmen that are going in. They've done that off their own backs, and that's similar to the stuff you were talking about, Sherry. My thing is, since October 2024, I have not had leisure or culture under my banner, but I see I'm on 2 reports for leisure strategy and culture strategy in the work programme. It's not mine. It's Ryan Hope's. Could we please have a look at everything that Ryan's involved with, because I had a letter from somebody the other day about leisure. So something in our system is telling everybody that I'm still looking after leisure. After 18 months, I think that needs to come off. I won't ignore things that come to me from leisure, obviously, because I solved the problem that Ryan had. But you know, I have got a bit on my plate at the moment.
Councillor Northam, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm nervous that we are not taking a more holistic view around the housing crisis that exists in parts of the council. The local plan is determining policies. I'm not part of the local plan working group, so I'm not able to see what they're doing. There's a number of factors that come together to deliver housing, and what I'm interested in is how that helps deliver social housing, because it's one of the tenets of the way the government operates the system. There's a levy on private housing development which enables affordable housing or social housing. And there are a number of factors that make that viable or not. The level of CIL that's set, the actual affordable homes policy, the site allocations, and this whole discussion around flexible settlement policy. There's a number of things which will interact and affect the way that developers see their development opportunities. And I think that should be something which is discussed at the Place and Resources Overview Committee. If that could be added to the list for consideration, I think it might be worthwhile.
Thank you. And I would just like to say about going back to the litter picking thing. My litter picking group in Upton, we don't have any problems at all. We have children along, and I find the council very helpful. I just one email and they pick it up. And I went to the Litter Free Dorset thing the other week, and yeah, the council were there and they were very helpful. Trying to establish new groups, litter picking groups and whatnot, and lending them equipment. But yeah, so we perhaps it's partly due to the nature of the local environment, but we don't have much problem with them not being able to do that stuff.
But just so as not to appear to have spoken disparagingly about my parishes, of course, some of them are absolutely superb and excellent at this. It's just that that wasn't the point I was making. And of course, they all do litter picking. What I'm really talking about is the slightly one step away from just litter picking. It's the whole question of the barriers we have put in place between the work that needs to be done and used to be done and local communities, parish councils, but also groups of residents, and the barriers that have slipped in to that space, not just by Dorset Council, but that's what I'd like us to examine. I absolutely right. Litter picking is done extremely well across Dorset because we get excellent support from that. But there's all sorts of other things, you know, daffodil planting and all of these things that used to get done that now are presented as problematic, and yet they're the same as they ever were. You know, we used to plant bulbs. Now there's all sorts of difficulties put in the way before you can get out and plant bulbs around your welcome to such a village sign. That's what I'm talking about, not specifically litter picking, just for clarity. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure whether how much effect we can have on that, because a lot of it is down to national policies and laws, isn't it? But would you like to say something about that, John, or not? But I think highways actually are often the things that cause a problem, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, several towns work together with highways. I know several towns, certainly my own town does. We clean road signs and all that kind of good stuff and do the verges within the town boundaries. But no, we're quite happy to work with. I mean, we do have a problem with people working on the highway and haven't been trained in Chapter 8. Which is a problem, which no doubt the new Lanksmen in Weymouth will have to undergo Chapter 8 training to make sure they're safe. I just put that in there. But no, we're quite happy to work with anybody within the parishes and town councils with their elected bodies to do stuff and work with them so that enable them to do stuff. So yeah, fine.
Thank you. Perhaps if you could consider it a problem, we should look at it. Okay, can we go back to housing then, please? Go back to your issue about housing. Anyone else want to raise any points about that? And thoughts from you, Anthony?
The housing stuff sits under people and health in terms of the responsibility of that committee, because they determine that direction. And then some of the broader planning stuff sits within the local plan and the local planning committees. So there's not a specific overview, place and resources element that would currently.
Sorry if I may come back. The local plan, I think, sits under places and resources, not housing.
The local plan has its own governance route and EAP.
Thank you. I'll approach that group. Thank you.
Right. So the other thing, looking at the report, the draft working programme, see biodiversity be covered today and communities, but East Scooter, that's proposed for a future meeting. We're happy with that. Yeah. Rights of way, that's an interesting one for me. Sorry, Richard. Who was it? Sorry, come on.
Councillor Gibson, Chairman. Not to curtail a debate for the sake of it, but this work plan looks awfully similar to the work plan that we discussed in an informal meeting just last week. And therefore, I think most of us around this room thought it was a pretty good work plan then. And I don't necessarily want to have the conversation twice.
Sherry, you had your hand up as well? Did you have any comments on that, Anthony, or? No, okay. Right, what else have we got? Leisure strategy, but no, that's being dealt with, isn't it? It's got an EAP looking at it. Yep. Culture. Does anyone have any strong feelings about culture?
Except to say that, yes, I would, it's a thing that it behoves us to discuss every now and then. So yes, I would, because there is a danger that, we are looking for things that are not statutory, that are cut. And if we're going to start reducing the funding for cultural activities, I would, which I hope we don't have to, but if we should find ourselves there, I would like us to have done it in an organised and having a proper discussion to consider the impact rather than just salami slicing. So yeah, I think it's probably timely for that to come back here.
I think Arts Reach carries the heavy load when it comes to the culture, doesn't it? I don't know what their financial position is. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I think the fact is a culture strategy, the majority that we're looking at is that the parish councils should be taking a lot of this on board regarding the local population and stuff. So yeah, I think we should be looking at that.
Okay, anyone have any objections to that? Beg your pardon? Yeah, it is scheduled in already, so. Traffic enforcement policy. Now, do you have any? Yeah, that's it. Well, in that case, is there anything that's not on this list that that people think we should be looking at? So, Val.
We did have a discussion online, didn't we, the other day, and I think we covered the subject quite well, actually. And I'm hoping you made a note of all our moans and groans and to go on the list. Thank you.
Well, we've got all these things in the programme already, and everyone's happy with that then, so we'll carry on with that as we are. Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I think that's about it, is it? Beg pardon? Oh, no urgent items or anything, or no, lovely. Okay, thank you. Close it, yeah.